According to reports from China's official media, He Weidong, Miao Hua, He Hongjun, Wang Xiubin, Lin Xiangyang, Qin Shutong, Yuan Huaji, Wang Haobin, and Wang Chuning were investigated. After examination, it was determined that these 9 individuals had seriously violated party discipline, were suspected of grave duty-related crimes involving extraordinarily large sums of money, that the nature of their conduct was extremely serious, and that the impact was exceptionally negative. In accordance with relevant party regulations and state laws, the Party Central Committee decided to expel all 9 from the Communist Party. On the eve of the 4th plenary session of the Communist Party's Central Committee, the Ministry of National Defense announced that 9 full generals had been expelled from the party. This can be seen as an official confirmation of the whereabouts of several individuals who had previously disappeared from public view. Without exception, all 9 of these full generals were personally promoted by Xi Jinping in recent years. All of them had once been his direct protégés, so-called disciples of the Son of Heaven. The fact that so many full generals were brought down in one sweep naturally invites extensive speculation. Commentators on YouTube have largely divided into 2 camps. One camp believes that this wave of attacks came from Xi Jinping's political opponents and that Xi has already lost power. The other camp believes that Xi Jinping still firmly holds power and that this action is merely Xi cleaning house himself. Both interpretations, however, face significant difficulties. The loss of power theory must explain why, after allegedly losing power, Xi Jinping was still able to personally inspect the troops during the September 3rd military parade, why he was still able to personally preside over the 4th plenary session, and why there were no changes whatsoever in the CCP's core positions and power centers after the supposed coup. If Zhang Yuxia had launched a coup, which party elders would he have been able to mobilize? When would a new leader step onto the stage? Clearly, the loss of power theory contains far too many gaps to be credible. The still in power theory, on the other hand, must explain a different set of questions. If Xi Jinping still holds power, why have so many of his absolute confidants been taken down? Why was even his most trusted secretary, Zhong Xiaojun, removed from a core position? What is the underlying logic of the military anti-corruption campaign over the past 2 years? Unfortunately, proponents of the still in power theory can only rely on instinctive judgments to assert that Xi remains firmly in control, yet they are unable to clearly explain the logic behind these bewildering waves of anti-corruption actions. Today, we will attempt to reconstruct the real motivations behind Xi Jinping's military purge. Before the program begins, please help by liking, sharing, and subscribing. From the 18th Party Congress to the 20th Party Congress, over a span of 10 years, the person Xi Jinping relied on most within the Central Military Commission was Xu Zhiliang. After the 18th Party Congress, although Xu Zhiliang ranked second among the vice-chairmen of the Central Military Commission, the first-ranked vice-chairman, Fan Changlong, was not trusted by Xi Jinping. As a result, Xu Zhiliang became the chief architect of Xi Jinping's consolidation of personal power, the primary assistant in Xi's military anti-corruption campaign and military reform. Xu Zhiliang helped Xi Jinping secretly plan an anti-corruption movement that swept through the entire military. 2 former vice-chairmen of the Central Military Commission and more than 60 generals were arrested. He also assisted Xi Jinping in formulating an unprecedented military reform plan, allowing Xi Jinping to firmly grasp military power and become the supreme ruler of the armed forces. At that time, Zhang Yuxia was still merely the head of the General Armaments Department and had not yet reached the very center of military power, while Miao Hua was operating on the periphery, assisting in bringing the Lanzhou military region and the navy under control. During these 5 years, Xi Jinping's people were united and focused on a large-scale political struggle against hostile factions, and internal power cliques had not yet taken shape. At the 19th Party Congress in 2017, Xu Zhiliang became the first-ranked vice-chairman of the Central Military Commission and took charge of the military's daily operations. Zhang Yuxia became the vice-chairman responsible for political work, and the 2 formally began working together as a leadership team. It was at this time that Xi Jinping discovered Miao Hua's abilities and promoted him to director of the General Political Department, effectively making him the military's equivalent of an organization chief. During these 5 years, the primary focus of Xi Jinping and Xu Zhiliang was increasingly on the Taiwan issue. Zhang Yuxia, meanwhile, focused on eliminating the lingering influence of Guo Boxiong and Xu Taihu, continuing subsequent anti-corruption efforts, and strengthening the system of responsibility under the CMC chairman. Although several high-ranking officers also fell during these 5 years, most of them were fugitives from the previous wave of anti-corruption. It can be said that these were 5 relatively calm years, and also 5 years focused on developing military combat capability and preparing for the reunification of Taiwan. During this period, because of Xu Zhiliang's restraining influence, Zhang Yuxia had not yet accumulated the extensive power he would later wield, and Miao Hua, having just arrived at the general political department, still needed time to cultivate his own influence. Miao Hua had to report to Zhang Yuxia, who oversaw political work, and their relationship was relatively harmonious. These 5 years were also a period of great confidence for Xi Jinping. He believed that he had eliminated all factions within the military, a problem that even Mao Zedong had failed to solve. He believed that he had become the undisputed supreme leader of the armed forces, and that within a few years he would be able to liberate Taiwan and become a ruler whose legacy could rival that of Mao Zedong and Deng Xiaoping. At the 20th National Congress of the Communist Party of China in 2022, both Xu Zhiliang and Zhang Youqia had exceeded the age limit. Due to a gap in military talent, it was necessary to retain one senior general as a stabilizing figure. Between the two, Xi Jinping chose Zhang Youqia to remain in office beyond the normal retirement age. Xu Zhiliang had already served 2 terms as vice chairman and had accumulated considerable influence within the military. If he had been allowed to remain, it would have been easy for his power to grow beyond control, which would have been unfavorable to power balancing and to Xi Jinping's own position. For the same reason, many generals with Air Force backgrounds did not receive promotions on schedule, as a precaution against excessive expansion of Xu Zhiliang's influence. The selection of the other vice chairman in charge of political work was more awkward. Among the previous term's members of the Central Military Commission, the only ones who met the age requirements to remain in this term were Miao Hua and Jiang Shengmin. Miao Hua believed that he was slightly superior to Jiang Shengmin in all respects, and that he should therefore assume the position of vice chairman at the 20th Party Congress. For this reason, he worked diligently, demonstrated absolute loyalty to Xi Jinping, and showed great respect toward Zhang Youqia. However, Xi Jinping suddenly decided to change the rules, choosing a cadre with operational military experience rather than one with a purely political work background to serve as the second vice chairman. Because Miao Hua came from a political work background, he lost his eligibility for the position. With no hope of becoming vice chairman himself, Miao Hua shifted strategy and fully supported his junior associate, He Weidong, for the position of vice chairman, effectively becoming a kingmaker. At the 20th Party Congress, He Weidong was neither a full member nor an alternate member of the Central Committee, nor even a party delegate. He attended the Congress as a non-voting participant and was elected vice chairman of the Central Military Commission, creating a miracle in the history of the Communist Party's military. This was, of course, due to Xi Jinping's favor, but it also depended on Miao Hua's maneuvering. Mao Zedong once said, "Without a party outside the party, there is imperial thinking. Without factions inside the party, there are all kinds of strange phenomena." After the old factions disappeared, new cliques and factions quickly emerged within the military. After the 20th Party Congress, Zhang Youqia, as the first vice chairman, retained beyond retirement age and the one presiding over the work of the Central Military Commission, held enormous power. He successively took charge of both political work and military operations, turning the Rocket Force and the General Armaments Department into his spheres of influence. In the process of filling the power vacuum left by Xu Zhiliang, Zhang Youqia placed many of his people into key departments. At the same time, Miao Hua and He Weidong began to dominate military personnel arrangements. Their influence rose rapidly and they became Xi Jinping's new favorites. If Miao Hua had previously been relatively weak within the Central Military Commission, the addition of He Weidong allowed their faction to gradually acquire the strength to contend with Zhang Youqia on equal footing. The military gradually split into 4 distinct factions. The first faction consisted of Zhang Youxia's people. He favored cadres from the General Armament System and the Rocket Force, as well as army officers from the 14th Army and the Shenyang military region. The second faction consisted of Miao Hua and He Weidong's people. They came from the Nanjing military region and the 31st Army, along with some officers from the Navy and the General Political Department, where Miao Hua had previously worked. The third faction consisted of the remaining people associated with Xu Zhiliang. Although Xu Zhiliang maintained a low profile, he had served as vice chairman of the Central Military Commission for 10 years and had promoted many Air Force officers during that time. The fourth faction consisted of those who pledged direct loyalty to Xi Jinping. This included Zhong Shaojun, director of the Central Military Commission General Office, Jiang Shengmin, secretary of the Military Discipline Inspection Commission, as well as the military's political legal system and security apparatus. These were the fundamental instruments through which Xi Jinping controlled the military. Of course, all factions acknowledged Xi Jinping's leadership, as this was the basis for their continued existence. In July 2023, following a series of accidents and incidents involving leaks, the Rocket Force became the first branch of the military to experience a collapse-style corruption scandal. Most of its senior leaders, including several former commanders, were removed as a result. At this time, He Weidong had just assumed the position of vice chairman responsible for political work. As someone who had been promoted over multiple ranks, he urgently needed a major achievement to repay Xi Jinping's favor. Under Miao Hua's planning, cadres from the 31st Army were appointed to concurrently serve as discipline inspection leaders within the rocket force, with the intention of conducting a thorough investigation. Corruption in rocket force equipment procurement soon implicated two former heads of the General Armaments Department and Ministers of National Defense. These two departments had long been Zhang Yuxia's power base. During this period, Zhang Yuxia was once placed in an extremely awkward position and came close to being brought down. According to the investigation, Li Shangfu, as a member of the Central Military Commission and head of the General Armaments Department, had actually bribed someone. So who was the recipient of the bribe? Li Shangfu's superiors were only Xi Jinping and Zhang Yuxia. Who do you think it was? The Military Discipline Inspection Commission even publicly released the results of this investigation, with an implication that was extremely clear. However, Miao Hua and He Weidong failed to understand Xi Jinping's thinking. Xi Jinping still valued personal ties with comrades who had worked alongside him for decades. And more importantly, without Zhang Yuxia, he would have had no one else to rely on. If Zhang Yuxia were investigated and removed, would He Weidong then be made first vice chairman? In that case, with He Weidong and Miao Hua working together, would they not effectively sideline Xi Jinping himself? Therefore, the two vice chairmen of the Central Military Commission had to come from different factions in order to check and balance each other. As a result, Zhang Yuxia was not brought down, and the collection of evidence in this corruption case was limited to the period after 2017, because prior to 2017, the head of the General Armaments Department had been Zhang Yuxia himself. 明白，以下内容连续承接上文，直至全文结束，保持纯英文电子书正文，主段中式翻译，不加说明，不改写，不中组。Although they failed to bring down Zhang Yuxia, He Weidong and Miao Hua still achieved a major victory. Taking advantage of the situation, they placed many of their own people into Zhang Yuxia's territory. Miao Hua arranged for his trusted subordinate, Wang Hobin, who came from the Navy system, to be appointed commander of the rocket force, making him the first external commander to take charge of this highly closed system. They also extended their reach into all corners of the military. This can be seen from the positions held by the several full generals who were later removed. If they had stopped at this point, the outcome would have been perfect. However, young people who have just tasted power rarely know when to stop. After the military reforms, Xi Jinping reshaped the military's central system into one resembling the CCP Central Committee. The four general headquarters were dismantled and reorganized into more than a dozen functional departments, all directly responsible to the chairman of the Central Military Commission. Among these, the Political and Legal Affairs Commission leads the military's intelligence and security systems. Together with the General Office and the Discipline Inspection Commission, it constitutes the core of the Central Military Commission's central apparatus. These departments are directly related to the security of military power and represent Xi Jinping's most concealed and sensitive stronghold. Yet Miao Hua and He Weidong were bold enough to extend their hands into this domain as well. The secretary of the Military Discipline Inspection Commission, Zhang Shengmin, was directly loyal to Xi Jinping and highly senior, making him difficult to co-opt. As a result, Miao Hua and He Weidong transferred Tang Hua, who came from the Nanjing military region, to serve as deputy secretary of the Military Discipline Inspection Commission, thereby strengthening their penetration into the discipline system. They also reassigned Xi Jinping's most trusted aide, Zhong Shaojun, to serve as political commissar of the National Defense University, and arranged for Fang Yongxiang, who came from the 31st Army, to take over as director of the Central Military Commission General Office. Although Zhong Shaojun thereby became eligible for promotion to full general, he was removed from the General Office, which is the core hub of the military system. Miao Hua's faction then moved to fill this vacancy. Wang Renhua, secretary of the Central Military Commission Political and Legal Affairs Commission, also came from the Navy system and had very close ties with Miao Hua. In this way, He Weidong and Miao Hua came to control both the General Political Department and the Central Military Commission General Office, while extending their influence into the Military Discipline Inspection Commission and the Political and Legal Affairs Commission, the two most critical institutions. Now consider the full generals who were later investigated. Wang Xiubin, Executive Deputy Director of the Joint Operations Command Center of the Central Military Commission. Lin Xiangyang, Commander of the Eastern Theater Command. Qin Shutong, Political Commissar of the Army. Yuan Huaji, Political Commissar of the Navy. Wang Haobin, Commander of the Rocket Force, and Wang Chuning, Commander of the People's Armed Police Force. This almost covered more than half of the entire military system. Although Xi Jinping is the commander-in-chief of the military, he is simultaneously the leader of the party and must manage all major affairs of the country. He must also contemplate how to deal with Trump and how to reclaim Taiwan. The time he can devote to the military is extremely limited. Moreover, he has relatively little direct experience in managing the military and has limited direct contact with senior officers. He can only rely on the functional departments of the Central Military Commission to manage this massive institution. Miao Hua and He Weidong, however, were able to influence Xi Jinping's judgment precisely by controlling these departments. All officers above the deputy division level had to receive approval from Miao Hua's camp before their appointments could be submitted to Xi Jinping. As a result, any officer seeking promotion had to demonstrate loyalty to Miao Hua. Military officers tend to be pragmatic. That demonstration of loyalty was often expressed in the form of heavy stacks of cash. At this point, Miao Hua and He Weidong had surpassed both Xu Zhiliang and Zhang Youqia, becoming the largest faction within the military and turning into another Xu Zhaihu and Ling Jihua. Their primary concern was no longer how to implement Xi Jinping's strategic vision, but how to maximize the power of their own group. When recommending personnel, their main criterion was whether the individual was one of their own and whether he had expressed loyalty to them, rather than whether he met Xi Jinping's requirements. The officials they promoted formed a massive interest group centered around the two of them, which had already endangered Xi Jinping's control over the military and seriously undermined its combat effectiveness. If you were Xi Jinping, would you tolerate such a powerful faction under your command? These people came from the same system, had extremely close ties with one another, coordinated privately when problems arose, and shared benefits together. It was like Lin Biao's four great generals. Although they all claimed loyalty to Mao Zedong, their primary loyalty had already shifted to Vice Chairman Lin. If you were Xi Jinping, what would you do? While He Weidong and Miao Hua were at the height of their power, Vice Chairman Zhang remained patient. As an experienced master of political struggle, he understood political rules better than they did and was more familiar with the temperament and taboos of the supreme leader. During his low point, he quietly directed his subordinates to collect evidence of factionalism and bribery involving the two men, while maintaining contact with retired military elders and secretly accumulating strength for a counterattack. He soon waited for his opponents to make a fatal mistake. Among the mistakes made by Miao Hua, the one that most alarmed Xi Jinping concerned the arrangements involving Zhong Shaojun and He Hongjun. As Xi Jinping's long-serving chief secretary and longtime director of the Central Military Commission General Office, the most appropriate position for Zhong Shaojun after leaving the General Office should have been Executive Deputy Director of the General Political Department. In the past, Deng Xiaoping's secretary Wang Ruilin and Jiang Zemin's secretary Jia Ting-an were both arranged in this way. At the very least, Zhong Shaojun should have been given an ordinary deputy director position. This would have helped their patron maintain control over military personnel matters and would also have benefited the career development of these chief secretaries. However, in June 2024, Miao Hua and He Weidong temporarily reassigned Zhong Shaojun to serve as political commissar of the National Defense University, and then arranged for Miao Hua's confidant, He Hongjun, to take over as executive deputy director of the General Political Department. Not only that, they also arranged for Fang Yongxiang, who came from the 31st Army, to concurrently serve as director of the Central Military Commission General Office. A shrewd politician, in order to ease the leader's suspicions, would have recommended someone from another faction to occupy these positions. This revealed both Miao Hua's greed for power and his political immaturity. Zhang Youxia understood strategy very well. He did not directly report problems involving He Weidong, as that would have been too sensitive and too wide-ranging. Instead, he focused on reporting Miao Hua's problems and produced solid evidence of Miao Hua's bribery and faction building. He even persuaded senior figures such as Xu Zhiliang to support him, since Miao Hua's arrogance had also harmed the interests of these elders. Complaints from two vice-chairmen of the Central Military Commission were enough to make Xi Jinping aware of the seriousness of the problem. As a result, officials closely associated with Miao Hua fell one after another. As the investigation deepened, problems involving He Weidong were also uncovered, and a rapidly rising faction was quickly extinguished. In this unprecedented anti-corruption storm, the person who scored the highest marks was Jiang Shengmin, Secretary of the Military Discipline Inspection Commission. He withstood the test in both rounds of anti-corruption campaigns and successfully completed the tasks assigned by the supreme leader. Some people claim that Jiang Shengmin belongs to Zhang Youxia's faction, but this is a misunderstanding. A look at their resumes shows that before Jiang Shengmin became secretary of the Discipline Commission, Zhang Youxia had never been his direct superior. The two have no prior connection, and sharing the same hometown alone does not constitute an alliance. Jiang Shengmin actually came from the Policy Research Department of the General Political Department and was an able theoretician in his early years. His promotions were not particularly rapid until Xu Zhiliang took charge of political work, after which he received several key advancements. However, Jiang Shengmin's thinking was very clear. Regardless of who had promoted him in the past, from the moment he became a member of the Central Military Commission, he recognized only one boss, Xi Jinping. When instructed to investigate Zhang Yuqia's faction, he thoroughly investigated the rocket force. When instructed not to implicate Zhang Yuqia, he immediately applied the brakes. When instructed to investigate his direct superior, He Weidong, he promptly found substantive evidence. Wherever the boss pointed, he struck, striking hard and accurately. This is what makes him Xi Jinping's ideal cadre. These two anti-corruption storms placed Zhong Xiaojun in an awkward position. As Xi Jinping's chief secretary for decades and the head of the military's central apparatus, he neither helped Xi Jinping identify military talent nor detected Miaohua's conspiracy at an early stage. He was even played around by Miaohua's faction, allowing Xi Jinping to be misled for a long time. From this perspective, Zhong Xiaojun was unqualified, at least in terms of ability, and far inferior to Wang Ruilin and Jia Ting'an. He failed to perform the role he should have played. Nevertheless, as Xi Jinping's #1 confidant, his promotion to full general and transfer to another important position was only a matter of time. Online rumors claiming that he was recently investigated are complete nonsense. Another figure who experienced extreme ups and downs during these two storms was Vice Chairman Zhang. He personally witnessed many of his close associates being brought down and nearly found himself summoned for investigation as well. In the end, he survived under the protection of the leader. This roller coaster experience made him both more grateful and loyal to Xi Jinping, while also frightening him deeply, making him far more cautious and diligent in reporting everything to the leader. As for online rumors claiming that he launched a coup, Vice Chairman Zhang was probably cursing the ancestors of those spreading such stories. Xi Jinping now faces a new dilemma: how to fill the power vacuum left by the Miaohe faction. Should he allow Zhang Yuqia's people to fill it? That would result in Zhang Yuqia becoming too dominant and lacking effective checks, something the supreme leader would not want to see. His only option is to reactivate Air Force generals left behind by Xu Qiliang. Han Shengyan, commander-in-chief of the September 3rd military parade, rose onto the historical stage in this way, and more Air Force generals will likely assume important positions in the future. At the same time, Xi Jinping's greatest challenge has emerged: how to choose the next generation of military successors. With Zhang Yuxia already severely over retirement age, He Weidong having fallen, and half of the Central Military Commission members disciplined, how will the next CMC leadership be formed? How can systemic problems be prevented from recurring? This is Xi Jinping's dilemma, and it is the dilemma faced by all dictators. In fact, a similar storm occurred in the upper ranks of the Chinese military 33 years ago. Let us briefly compare these two purges. In early 1992, in order to warn the then central leader Jiang Zemin, Deng Xiaoping launched his southern tour. Standing beside him at the time was Yang Shangkun, president of the state and first vice chairman of the Central Military Commission. Yang Shangkun's brother, Yang Baibing, who served as Secretary General of the CMC and Director of the General Political Department, soon declared that the military must safeguard reform and opening. Yang Shangkun acted as Deng Xiaoping's liaison with the Politburo and was Deng's most trusted confidant. The Yang brothers had effectively controlled the military for several years, yet only a few months later they were removed from power. Without revisiting the maneuvering by Jiang Zemin and Zhang Qinghong in detail, the fundamental reason Deng Xiaoping abandoned the Yang brothers was that their power within the military had grown too great and they failed to exercise restraint, arousing Deng's suspicion. Personnel lists and private meetings were merely surface-level reasons. In Deng's subconscious, military power was the foundation of all his authority. Any factor that might affect his control over the military had to be eliminated. This is the taboo of all dictators. Although Jiang Zemin later assumed the position of CMC chairman, Deng Xiaoping remained the de facto commander-in-chief. Jiang was effectively equivalent to a vice chairman, while the Yang brothers, one vice chairman and one director of the General Political Department, closely resembled the combination of He Weidong and Miao Hua. Likewise, the struggle between Jiang Zemin and Yang Shangkun closely resembles the struggle between Zhang Yuxia and He Weidong. The difference between the two purges lies in the fact that Deng Xiaoping used more moderate methods to handle the Yang brothers, and because the entire process was concealed within the transition of the 14th Party Congress, most ordinary people were unaware of such a major change. If someone at the time had claimed that Deng Xiaoping's closest confidants, the Yang brothers, had been removed and therefore Deng had lost power, how would you have judged that claim? For top leaders, the concept of a trusted confidant is fluid. When they need you, you are a confidant. When they no longer need you, you are not. Now, looking at the current situation, how would you judge it? Has Xi Jinping lost power, or does he still firmly hold it? And please refer to other information and make your own judgment. Thank you all. Creating content is not easy. I hope you will follow, like, and comment so that YouTube will expand the reach of this video and allow more viewers to see the truth about how China's internal system operates. Thank you for your support.